Alright, welcome to another episode of the Talk Podcast, where I talk to my buddies about memories or whatever the hell we want to talk about. So this episode's going to be a little bit different. I wanted to do an episode with just me. I wanted to see kind of what we do if it was just me, myself, and I talking about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Because, I've had buddies on, I've had guests, and this is the first one that I'm going to have really by myself. I'm gonna talk for about an hour, just so you guys kind of like get to know more about me and where I'm coming from and what I like and what I enjoy. And we're gonna touch a lot of subjects throughout this hour. So if you're just tuning in, or if you're just wanting to chill, relax, sit down for an hour and just listen to bullshit all for an hour, then go on ahead, be my guest. So my name is John. You guys know me. So the people who know me and have been my friends or whatever for however long, you know me. And I'm the guy who was the weird kid at school. Like, when I grew up, I was like the kid nobody wanted to talk to. I was the kid that nobody wanted to, but that's okay though, because like, at the end of the day, and this is like one of the things that I am proud of myself about to this very day, is that like I don't, and this is what's been like a defining characteristic of mine. And I know I'm kind of going off on like a semi tangent, but that's okay. Who cares? But for me, if you're, and I talked about this on the last episode, but if you are watching this, and if you're in high school or if you're in middle school, whichever one, it doesn't matter. If you're in either one of those, and you are desperately trying to be popular, there's no need to be. I look at myself and like I'm content with what I have. I'm content with my friend group. I'm content with what I've learned in my lifetime. I'm content with being the weird kid. And like, that's okay. It's okay to be weird, because if you're like everybody else, then you're basic. You're boring. If you just be you, that's what matters. And so like, it did take me a very long time to learn that skill, to learn that mindset. Probably took me until, I would want to say, freshman year of high school. Freshman or sophomore year of high school. But anyway, enough of that. I was a weird kid. I was the kid that everybody thought was the weirdo. But, I'm chilling right now. Right? I'm chilling right now. I have a great group of friends. I'm in South Carolina. I'm not in Virginia anymore. So, like, all that crazy bullshit that I had back there in Virginia stays in Virginia. So, if there's one lesson to learn from me, is that if you're in middle school and you're in high school, don't be afraid to be you. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't try to be something you're not, because you're just gonna torture yourself, and that's not good for anybody. So, anyway, enough of that. I was a weird kid in school. 20 years old, gonna be 21 in 2 months. Depending on what I want to do in the future, I definitely for sure want to do something with alcohol. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be yet, but I definitely want to do something with alcohol, with like Jack or something. But I definitely want to involve alcohol at some point in this channel, in even in the podcast. Maybe we'll do like an episode where me and Linwood get slightly tipsy and talk a podcast. This is also like, this is an episode I've wanted to do for a little bit, because due to like scheduling conflicts with other people that I've been trying to get on the show, it's been really difficult to gather people around. So I thought, it was a good idea for me to run a podcast and to see where it goes, because I could talk about fucking everything for an hour. I'm an open book, really. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm an open book. So anyway, enough about the podcast. Enough about the whole high school advice, all that. So let's get into what I enjoy. Since I was very young, and I've mentioned it on multitudes of podcast episodes, but since I was young, I always loved video games. Video games drive my will to do this. One of the main reasons why I wanted to start YouTube in the first place was because of video games. And I saw guys like Markiplier, guys like Jacksepticeye, all these guys that started out small, but then they became big, huge successes. PewDiePie even. Just by playing video games. And like, I thought that was the coolest shit ever growing up. And I still think it's the coolest shit growing up. Imagine that, man. Imagine your living consisting of just playing video games. I'm gonna turn my light on because I'm getting bad lighting. Anyway, so yeah, imagine that. That'd be fucking sick. So that's always been something I've really wanted to do, and I started to put something out there like 2015, and let's keep in mind here, I had no fucking idea what I was doing. Mainly because I was a child. At that point, when I was starting to record videos, I had to have been like 14 or 15. So I wasn't necessarily, like, I kind of had the mindset, be like, excuse me, I'm gonna put out bangers, but like, there's a reason why I deleted all the videos, cause they were cringy. They were just not good, and like they were brutal. So anyway, what made me want to start this back up, one of the driving forces that I'll get back to video games in a minute. What made me want to start this channel back up was because of SML. If you guys have ever heard of SML, aka Super Mario Logan, aka whatever you want to call it. Super Mario Logan, I started watching when I was 8 years old. Probably. I would say I started watching in 2008 when they were like just starting. And this was when YouTube was like in its infancy. So I started watching them in 2008. And I've been a fan of them for 15 years, bro. I think it's 15 years. Maybe my math's shit. I have no idea. But I've been a fan of them for 15 years. And it was at one of the guys that's part of SML. His name is Lance. Shout out to Lance. He made his own YouTube channel. And I've always loved Lance. I always loved the characters he voiced. I always loved the humor he brought. I always loved everything that he brought to the table. So when I saw that he made a channel, I was like, okay, what if? I was pondering it for a little bit, and I never really pulled the trigger. So what made me pull the trigger, and this is why I started the podcast. I promise you I'm going to get back to video games. The problem with me is that I get on tangents and I don't stop. But when he made his podcast, shout out to the Beyond Buzz podcast. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to check it out for yourselves. When he uploaded that podcast, I was like, shit, what would happen? Because they talked about memories in their podcast. So I was like, what if, because I have so many funny memories with like so many different people. And so I was like, what if I make a podcast with Linwood? Because me and Linwood have amazing chemistry. Me and him work perfectly together. We are like, because me and him have been friends for 14 years, 15 years. So like we know each other like the back of our hand. And so like we both decided, hey, why don't we start a podcast? And I took heavy inspiration from that podcast, the Beyond Buzz podcast. And again, I'll drop a link in the description. And the rest is history. I'm telling you what, I haven't had more fun in my entire life. Even going to Disney World. I haven't had more fun in my entire life than recording this podcast. It has been such a fun ride. Because the great thing about the podcast, and it's something that I like really rely heavily on, and I value the most, is that I get to chat with people who I would never get to chat with. And like people in high school who I was really cool with, because see, when you graduate high school, those relationships kind of drop. Just because you go your separate ways, you do your own separate things. And it's nothing against the person. You know, I didn't decide to say, hey, I'm going to ignore the hell out of Austin, or hey, I'm going to ignore the hell out of Chase. It's just a thing where it's like we're doing our own things. And so this podcast has given me an opportunity to grow closer to these people who I probably wouldn't be as close with anymore. So I've been able to gain a lot of positive relationships from this podcast, and I've been able to share a lot of fun memories with you guys, because my life's been a cavalcade of shit. It's been a hell of a ride, and we're only 20 years in. So we're in like the first inning of the game of life, as you would say. So that's that. So anyway, overall, I've never had more fun recording this podcast. I've enjoyed every second of it, and I don't regret a damn thing. So, that's enough of the podcast. So, let's go back into video games. So, I started probably when I was 6 years old. My grandmother bought my dad an N64 a long time ago, probably before I was born. And so, he ended up eventually letting me play it. And that was kind of my first taste into the whole world of video games. And so my game was Super Mario 64. That game was a banger. Let me see if I still have the cartridge. Hold on a minute. I think I still have the cartridge. Never mind. I'm not gonna check. Never mind. I'm recording a podcast. Okay. So I'll edit it in there or something maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so played it in 64 first. I used to play a lot of Excite Bike in Mario 64, and I forgot what it's something with like a glove. I forgot the game title, but that was a fun game to play. So that was like my first experience with video games, and then it evolved into excuse me, god damn. It evolved into the DS, which I fucked heavy. I mean, I would not stop playing that shit. Like that was my baby girl. My baby girl. So I'd play the shit out of the DS. Then I would get a Wii for Christmas. And that's when it exploded. When I started playing video games at first, it was just like a hobby. Something to do in the spare time. But when I got the Wii, that's when it exploded. And I played Mario Kart Wii a lot. I was a big Mario guy. I was just I'm still a Mario guy to this day. I fuck heavily with Nintendo. Sue me if you have a problem with that. But I would always play something Mario on any device that I'd have. So, whether it be Mario Kart, New Super Mario Brothers, Mario Party, whatever the fuck. So, then it would transition over to Xbox. And that's when I met a lot of my buddies who are from Virginia, Kwame included, which I still hope to have him on at some point. But I met a lot of people playing Xbox. That's kind of when, you know, my whole social life started going in terms of video games. And then I got the Wii U, and then I got the Switch, which I currently own now. So I've had a video game life, man. I've played a lot of things. And mostly what I play now is like Fortnite. I play a lot of Fortnite. And people might be like, oh, such a trash game. I don't give a shit. That game's fire. It's been fire for years. Sue me. I'm gonna get a lot of lawsuits by the end of this fucking podcast. I don't care. Because, this is my opinion, and that's how I feel. So, it shouldn't matter, man. I mean, video gaming is the best thing that's happened. It probably is the reason I'm doing this podcast. It's has stemmed a lot of things that have evolved me into the person I am today. So let's move on to something else. What do we move on to? That's what happens when you have me at the helm of this podcast. Okay. So let's talk about football. So my whole life, I've been a Washington fan. See, now what I'm saying is I'm a Washington, whatever the hell you want to call him, fan. Because they've had 3 names in 2 years. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the first name. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not. But I'm a Commanders fan. Got my Washington football team on. Got my Pittsburgh Penguins game. The game 4 is actually on the TV right now, but I'm not watching it because I'm recording the podcast. I'm a big football and hockey guy. I only started getting into hockey really like 5 years ago. Football I've been a fan of my whole life, but hockey I just recently started to get into. And, my mom's side of the family, which is more hockey fan, I don't know what else you call it. My dad's side isn't necessarily a big fan of sports. It's like my mom's side that's more of a sporty type. So that's where I picked up a lot of what I like in sports. So yeah, I'm a Penguins fan, full. I know a few people that are going to watch this podcast that are Penguins fans. Shout out to fellow Penguins fans. You already know what the fuck's up. But yeah, I've been a Washington fan my whole life. Our team fucking sucks. It has sucked for years, way before I was born. I know a lot of people aren't going to like the fact that I'm a Washington fan. There are plenty of Dallas fans that I know. There are plenty of Eagles fans that I know. Fuck you, Austin. And there are plenty of Giants fans. There are a lot of fans that wouldn't appreciate what I'm wearing on my head. But at the end of the day, I'm loyal to my team. And I hate motherfuckers. I hate people. Okay, so here's a rant, right? I hate people who fucking bandwagon teams. That is literally the worst thing you could do. If you've been a fan of, let's just say Vikings. Let's just say you've been a fan of the Vikings for your whole entire life. And they suck ass. And then you see that the Chiefs are doing good, because the Chiefs have been doing good for years. You're going to bandwagon on that team just because the Vikings suck at this moment in time. I could never, ever, ever betray my team. Never. I could never imagine being another fan of, being a number one fan of any other team. I'm a fan of the Skins, the Steelers, and the Saints. I said it. Sorry. The Skins, Steelers, and the Saints. Because my mom's side is Pittsburgh, hence the Penguins, and my dad's side is New Orleans, hence the Saints. So I'm a fan of all 3 teams, but I couldn't betray my number 1 team. I don't get why people do that. It's annoying. Stay loyal to your team. That's another Johnny life lesson I'm trying to preach to the masses, I guess, is just stay loyal to your team. If you're a fan of a football team, if you're a fan of a team of any kind, just stay loyal to your team. Don't be one of those people who bandwagon teams because they're doing great. I'm staying in shit, but I'm loyal. Loyalty is everything when it comes to sports. But anyway, yeah, been a Washington fan my whole life. Been a Penguins fan for 5 years, 6 years. So that's that. Let's talk about my experience in Midlothian. So I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. Well, I wasn't born and raised. I was born in Richmond, but I was raised in Midlothian. So Midlothian's a little town in Virginia. I lived there. Excuse me. I've lived there for, at that point, 15 years. So, like, from 2003 to 2018. Or, like, late 2017, whatever. So, I've lived there for quite a little bit. And I'm so lucky that I was able to have what I had in Midlothian. And I mean, I look back at it 5 years from today, or not today, it wasn't 5 years ago today. When I look back on it 5 years, like when I first was told that I was going to have to leave and go to South Carolina, I was furious. Yeah, the level of anger that I had towards my parents and towards life in general. I was in a very dark place at that point in time. I had just developed so many things, and I guess I was too young really to understand the concept of moving and the concept of change. I was in a really dark place at that point. I didn't want to talk to anybody. It sucked waking up every day knowing I was one day closer to leaving. It was a really hard time for me. And, over time, like I said, I've matured in that, I've pretty much really enjoyed living here. It's been great for me personally. But leaving everybody behind, leaving Linwood behind was the single hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was a really tough time period for me. Because you build so much, and like 15 years is a long time. I basically spent my whole school life there. I left mid-junior year, so one day I had Midlothian High School classes. The next day I had North Myrtle Beach classes. And so like that was insanely difficult in a lot of different ways. And you know, if you've moved, you know that when you're in a new school, it's like you're in a whole nother world. And like my first day in North Myrtle Beach, I didn't find a friend probably until a week in. Probably. So if like for the first week I was silent, didn't talk to anybody, didn't do anything, just did my shit, and that was it. But I met a guy named Skylar. He was my first person that I really started to gain some sort of a friendship with. Shout out to Skylar at North Myrtle Beach. Him and a guy named Ronnie. Shout out to Ronnie. Ronnie really helped me transition for sure. But on top of that, I met Jack, and that's one of the main things I want to preface, and that's one of the main reasons why I'm happy where I am. I met Jack and his sister Olivia. They're my best friends down here. They've given me a reason why it's okay for change, and I've found really good friends here. And I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it to go that way when I moved. Also, I found good friends in Jacob and Guinevere. Shout out to them too. I've just made a lot of positive relationships in this state that I didn't think I'd ever be able to make. So advice to people: if you are moving, if you're in the middle of moving, if you're afraid of what's next, don't be, because you're going to meet somebody. I met somebody, and I'm very grateful that I met Jack, out of all people. He's been great for me. He's like cathartic for me when I'm ever in my tough times, whenever I'm in life's toughest situations. He's the guy I go to. He's the guy I find solace in. He's the guy I find comfort in. And so, Jack, that you mean a lot to me, man. Even though you like to bullshit, you're a good buddy of mine, and you've really helped me kind of settle into this new chapter in my life. So, big shout out to Jack. He's been on a few episodes before. The Nerd War, and then 5th episode. He's the fucking man. So yeah, when I moved here, did all that, and everybody. Still kept in contact a lot with some people. I eventually had to cut some people out. It's a lot of personal shit that I'm not gonna disclose. But due to some personal reasons, I had to cut some people out from my life day to day. That was a little difficult, but at the end of the day, we're still chilling. We're still chilling. The few people that I got to keep were Dejan, Mikey, Eric, Linwood, Chase, Austin, Kwame, Manuel. Shout out to all you guys. So I'm happy that I was able to make new relationships here while still keeping the ones that I've had for years. And so, anyway, enough of the sappy shit, because that was pretty sappy. All that was pretty fucking sappy. So I want to talk about work. So I've worked at a nursing home for about 2 years. And my dad's been an administrator at a nursing home his whole life. Like, that's been the one thing he's always done. So I get the opportunity to work at his new building, which is the reason why I moved down here anyway. Was because there was an opportunity down here that he couldn't pass. Fine. Now I'm older, I understand. So it took about 4 years for me to start working there. Or 2 years for me to start working there. So I've been there for over 2 years. It's been a really nice experience for me. I've enjoyed working there. I'm kind of like a makeshift receptionist. So it's been a really cool experience, and it's kind of sparked the interest of being an administrator too, just like my dad, because of the experiences I've had working at this facility. I mean, I've had great coworkers. If any of you ever watch this podcast, shout out to you guys for putting a smile on my face every day I come to work. It's overall been a really, really nice experience for me. And if this never takes off, if this never gets to the point where I need it to, I'll have some backup. So, I'm not going to get too much else into work. I'm just going to say that I've enjoyed working there, and I've enjoyed the people that I've worked with. So anyway, let's see. What the hell else do I talk about? See, I came into this thinking I was going to be able to come up with an hour long of a conversation. I mean, for the most part, hell, we're almost halfway through. So I feel like we're getting something going. Something's better than nothing. Music. So I ask everybody about music, what they fuck with. So for me, it wasn't always Green Day. Green Day is my favorite band, but it wasn't always Green Day. When I first started diving into the arena of music, the things that I started with were rap and pop. And that was probably when I was like 10 years old. And then my taste for music kind of developed, and I got more of a palate. So when I was like in high school, I started messing around with heavy metal, which I fucked with for a period. And then I started messing with classic rock, which is one of my favorite genres. And then I started fucking with hard rock just recently. So I fuck with hard rock and I fuck with punk rock, which I got into a few years ago, which is why Green Day is my favorite band. And music's the thing where it's like, I can say all day long that I don't like country music, because I don't. But like, music's an art form, and it shouldn't matter what music you like. Music is as a positive experience for anybody. From any background, anything. It doesn't matter who you are. Music is a cathartic experience for a lot of people. For some people, music is their life, which, these people in these bands, rappers, even singers, whatever. Music is ingrained in their life. And that's how important music is and how impactful it can be towards certain people. So I always find music to be very, very important. And it's a nice stress relief for me sometimes. If I get too stressed out over something, I just pop on a fucking Green Day album and I just jam out. So music can serve a lot of purposes in someone's life, but the main purpose it should serve is that it's a positive experience for whatever you listen to. I don't care. I'm not a personal fan of country, but if someone out there loves country music, fucking go for it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's my rant about music. Let's talk about wrestling. Whew! I can talk about wrestling for the remainder of this podcast. So, I've been a fan of professional wrestling for over a decade. I would say I started around 2010. It was like one night where my dad had like a Tribute to the Troops show on, and I remember my eyes glued to the screen, and I was fucking hooked at that point. Since I've been a fan, I've been to something in my nose or something. Like three or four shows. I've been to shows, like, and all of them were in the Richmond Coliseum. I haven't went to any in South Carolina yet. But three or four of my shows were in Richmond because it was only 30 minutes away from the house. My favorite wrestler growing up, I always fucked with John Cena, bro. And I still fuck with John Cena. John Cena's a fucking GOAT. Jalen, I know you're watching this. Fuck that shit. John Cena's the GOAT. I want to have Jalen on so we can have a great wrestling debate. That would be fucking cool. Jalen's a homie. I didn't mention Jalen. I can't remember everybody that I'm so... But Jalen is somebody I want to have on and have a wrestling debate about certain things, certain topics, whatever. That's something I want to have for a future episode of the podcast. Because I love wrestling so fucking much that, like, I don't even care if it's WWE. I don't care if it's AEW. I don't care if it's New Japan. I don't care if it's Impact, TNA, Ring of Honor, whatever. I don't give a shit. I love professional wrestling, and I will live by the sword, die by the sword. I fucked the hell out of professional wrestling, and nobody's gonna change my mind on that. So I wanted to talk about. This is a rant I could talk about for quite a bit. So my biggest rant with professional wrestling is that of the community. The community for professional wrestling is very fucking toxic. In wrestling terminology, a push in wrestling terminology is when somebody is like getting more opportunities than other guys on the roster. So let's say, for example, me and Jalen are on a roster, and I get a push. Right? The people aren't behind me the fans aren't behind me getting a push. But they're behind Jalen getting a push. So like fans will complain about a certain person getting pushed over somebody else. And when that somebody else gets pushed, they complain because that person is being shoved down their throats. For example, Drew McIntyre. So Drew McIntyre, when he first started with WWE, he was signed in like 2009, I think. And he had a shitty first run. I mean, he sucked. Like, his character work just wasn't there. He was just acting like a dumbass, basically, on weekly television. And so, they eventually released him. So then he came back in, like, 2017. Now he's a fucking badass. And, like, people wanted him for the longest time to be pushed to the main event, to have a WWE Championship run, to have all these main event matches. And Drew got those, right? And people were excited about it. People were happy about it. I sure as hell was. But when Drew McIntyre started going down the totem pole after his peak kind of went into a plateau, people were complaining. People were complaining that he should be pushed again. Or because people, when he was champion, were tired of him already, so they said enough with Drew McIntyre. Let's get somebody else. So, people want Drew McIntyre back in the scene. It's like, well, dude, he was in the scene, and y'all wanted him out. So why do y'all want him back in? That's one thing, man. Wrestling fans never know what the fuck they want out of the product, whether it be WWE, AEW, whatever, this and that, whatever. Like, it goes across all wrestling companies. People don't understand what they want. When they get what they want, they complain about it. And then they go to the next flavor of the month. Whoever is next on the list. And, like, that's such a gripe with me. Because, like, I just watch the product. I just watch professional wrestling to watch it. I don't watch it to critique every single fucking thing. Like, I'll call WWE out. I'll call companies out on their bullshit when I have to. But I'm not going to critique every little fucking thing. I don't have the time or the patience for that. I'm just going to enjoy professional wrestling for what it is. And I wish more people had that kind of mindset. And, like, I don't know. I wish people could just sit down and enjoy the show. And, like, not worry about all this other shit. Like, oh, this person's not getting the treatment they deserve. Blah, blah, blah. XYZ, this, that, and the third. Doesn't fucking matter. Just watch the show. Just watch the show. Maybe just sit back, drink a cold one, watch the show. There's nothing wrong with that. And you might enjoy it better when you're not fucking complaining about everything. But, I mean, that's just my rant on it. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what these fans are thinking. But, anyway. Let's talk about Reagan. Reagan, I don't know if you're watching this podcast. I don't know. But, I never talked about it at the beginning with Lance and SML and all that. What inspired me to do this. But the reason why I'm looking into this camera right now is because of Reagan. She, whether she wants to believe me or not, has inspired me within our relationship to do this. Because I would tell her all the time, I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to do it again. I want to push for it. She would always tell me to do it. She would always tell me to go for it. And she got me this camera for Christmas. I guess I just haven't repaid my debt to her yet for kicking my ass to get started. Reagan's been, in the 2 years she's been my friend. She's instilled more motivation in me than I could have ever given myself. And that's one thing I don't want to necessarily talk about, but I'll talk about it anyway. I am not really a person that's easily motivated. My whole life I've kind of been like a guy who's like, oh, well, let's wait. Let's push back on something. Let's save it for later. I'm not really a guy that gets in there and jumps into it. And that's such a stupid thing to do. And Reagan, in the year and a half that we were together, changed a lot of things for me. I'm a lot more motivated to do things. I'm more motivated to sit down and do podcasts. I'm more motivated to do my schoolwork. I'm more motivated to go to work. I'm more motivated to do most things that if I never had met her, I don't know if I'd do. And Reagan is very essential in what I am today. So, Reagan, I just want to say thank you for that. And even though things with us personally didn't work out the way we intended to, I'm still very lucky that I've gotten to know you and that we have a close relationship together, dating or not. So I wanted to get that out of the way because I wanted to mention Reagan for sure. This podcast wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for her. So anyway, while we're on more of the sappy shit, because I also want to shout somebody else out. One more person, I promise. Linwood. If you are watching this, like anyone else, I want to thank you for being my brother, for being my best friend, and for being my number one support system through everything I've been through in my life. Whether we're in different states, whether you're in Colorado and I'm in South Carolina, it doesn't fucking matter. You're my best fucking friend. And I know you would take a bullet for me, and I would do the same for you. We have such a close relationship, and you're another reason why I wanted to start this podcast. Because who better to start the podcast with? Just know you mean more to me than you'll ever know. And a lot of this podcast is successful because of you. So, I appreciate you for being my brother, my best friend, and my guy for life. So, oh, Christ, I don't need to get emotional. Anyway, we got 20 minutes left. So, Christ, we got a lot of sappy shit. I'm sorry. Okay, I had to say something to those three people in particular, because they've changed a lot of things for me. But anyway, let's talk about the future of this channel. Let's talk about the future of the podcast, the future of the channel, what is to be expected. So how it's gonna work is, I don't know how many more podcasts I'm going to be filming at the moment. I might put the podcasts on hold. Because I also want to start exploring different things. I want to start doing reactions or video games or pay-per-view predictions, things like that. Like, when I started the podcast, I did not want that to be the sole thing on my channel. I never intended for the podcast to be the sole thing on my channel. I wanted to do different things with it and not just be a podcast channel. As much as I love doing the talk podcast, as much as I enjoy doing it, I think that it's best to try different stuff, and so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not sure which one of those things an exact that I'm gonna do. I don't know if it's gonna be reactions, or if it's gonna be gaming, or if it's gonna be pay-per-view predictions, or wrestling trivia quizzes, or things like something different than what like what you would normally see out of like a game. I want to be like an all-around channel. I want to be a guy where you will see a little bit of everything. You'll see a podcast, you'll see gaming, you'll see random miscellaneous shit. I want to be a guy who puts out different things. And like, I always thought I would get 15 episodes into the podcast. Excuse me. I always thought I'd get myself 15 episodes of the podcast before I transition into something different. And that's what I still plan on doing. So this would be, my episode would be episode number 12. Episode 11 has already dropped. Or not episode 11. I'm sorry. This is episode 11. Episode 10 is already out. Sorry. I messed up my math. So my goal with this podcast has always been to have 15 episodes, and I'm not saying goodbye to the podcast forever. I'm not saying I'm not going to pick it back up in the future. I'm just saying I want to start doing other things. And so for the moment, the podcast is going to be put on hold. After episode 15. After 15 episodes. So we still got 4 more before I decide to transition to something else. So be on the lookout every Tuesday. You guys know the drill. Every Tuesday, 12 o'clock, drop a new podcast. If it's just going to be just me, I have to see about other people. You know, this isn't just a me thing. And I know I did an episode by myself, just because I wanted to do something different than just have a guest on again. But for right now, that's where I'm at. After 15 episodes, I'm going to decide to move forward with whatever the hell's next. I haven't figured that part out yet. So that's the channel update there. I want to thank all 22 of you guys for subscribing to me. Even though it's not a lot, I think the fact that people actually watch my stuff is more than enough for me to want to continue. Even if it's 20 to 40 people per episode, I don't care. I'm happy someone watches it. I'm happy someone enjoys it. And so, even if it's just one person, that's enough for me to say, hey, somebody likes my content, I'm going to keep going. If I can just get one person to enjoy what I do, then that's what's important to me. And I'm gonna instill my motivation to continue this, even if I'm not getting a rise, or even if I'm not getting a spike or whatever. I don't care. I want to keep this going because it's important to me. This whole thing is important to me. And it's one of the few things I've really enjoyed to do recently in my lifetime. So be on the lookout for some more stuff. For sure. But anyway, I'm going to cut this one a little short. Because I don't really have much else to say. We went over a lot in this episode. And I mean, 10 minutes short of an hour isn't too bad. And I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me talk for an hour. And, most podcasts that are an hour that I've had are with other people. So, having just me, myself, and I, it could be a little boring. And I'm aware of that. But I just wanted to do something different for this episode and kind of give you guys an insider's look at the guy behind the Talk Podcast. So, anyway, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you've watched all the way to this point, or listened all the way to this point, you fucking rule. I love you guys very much. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Talk Podcast. Brother! Woo!